They say our reputation needs a new coat of paint and a delicate melody. But I say I like the bruises, 'cause a melody don't mean a thing if we don't have the strength to sing. And I won't be made to ever feel ashamed that I'm American made. I got American parts, got American faith, and America's heart. Go on, raise the flag. I got stars in my eyes. I'm in love with her.
The Talk Alternative is the 405media.com. Hello and welcome to Tuesday night. It is 7 Pacifico, 10 o'clock on the Lesser Coast, and that can only mean one thing: time for the Tami Jackson Show. Tami Jackson is the emerging threat from the West Coast. On Twitter, you can find her at Tami J, and she is also host of this Tami Jackson Show every Tuesday night, 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 Pacific, and Hump Day News Report. That's Wednesday. It's brand new with Jeff Dunitz. Same time on Wednesday. Tami is also the bossy boss of rightvoicemedia.com. Good evening, Tami Jackson, and welcome back to your Tuesday night show.
Good evening, John, and it was great to meet you this last weekend for the first time. A lot of people don't realize that we know each other, but after a year and a half, we finally met in person, and that was fantastic.
I love doing those live shows. They're a little bit of work, but they're a lot of fun if you can involve some people that you don't talk to on an everyday basis, and that would be the Tribbles.
Yep.
I'm down for that. So it was a lot of fun. We stretched our 1 hour Saturday morning into 2 hours. And
yes.
I listened to it, and it was a great time, no question.
It was a great time, and that's because my friends that we call the Tribbles, we're all friends of Hugh Hewitt. We're all like-minded conservatives with a sense of humor, and they're a talented bunch of fabulous people. So I was happy to give them the mics and let them just run with it.
Absolutely. You put them in front of a microphone and magic things happen.
Yep.
You ask them a couple of questions and they're off to the races. So we thank them all. Too numerous to mention here, but if you want to listen, the podcasts are up on the 405media.com. 2 hours, and that's live from Orange County, California. Bunch of listens on those already. Go ahead and listen to them and see how much fun that was. Anyway.
Yep.
Two guests tonight. Coming up later, Marc Hyden from the National Advocacy Coordinator with conservatives concerned about the death penalty. However, in the first segment, an old friend to the 405 radio, it's K. Carl Smith of the Frederick Douglass Republicans. Good evening, K. Carl Smith, and welcome to the Tami Jackson Show.
Hey, thank you all, and nice talking to you again. Hello, Tami.
Hi, K. Carl. I'm so glad to have you on. I got a little message today from our friend Nadra NZ, and he writes for me over at Right Voice Media, and he said, you ought to have K. Carl on your show. I think he'd like to be on. And I thought, well, good grief, I'd love to have him on, because I wrote about your organization last year, the Frederick Douglass Movement, and the website. What is the URL for the website? Let's see here.
It's Frederick, with two E's in Frederick Douglass, two S's in Douglass's last name. So it's Frederick Douglass Republican.com or .org.
Yes, exactly. And I don't know exactly how this came to my attention, but at the time I saw it and I loved it. And I loved the YouTube video about the organization and what it stood for. And tell us, I know this, but for those people listening that may not know, the Frederick Douglass Republican Movement encompasses 4 life empowering values. K. Carl, tell us what those are.
Yeah, to become a Frederick Douglass Republican, it's not based on your color or your ethnicity. It is based on your embracing in believing in the 4 life-empowering values of Frederick Douglass. These are the 4 values that allow him to rise from being born below poverty to prosperity and being born as a slave and became a statesman. Number 1 is respect for the U.S. Constitution. Number 2 is respect for life. 3, the belief in limited government. And 4, the belief in personal responsibility. So it's not about color. It's about those 4 life-empowering values. So that's what makes you a Frederick Douglass Republican.
And it's pretty amazing because blacks across this country have been fed a lot of lies, haven't they, by mainstream media and the left?
Yeah, it's a black community, a Latino community, Americans as a whole, but you're exactly right. We're all being lied to, and now we have a government that wants to enslave not just black folks, but wants to enslave all of us as an American citizen.
Absolutely.
You're exactly right.
In my article, I wrote, one preacher in that awakening, about the awakening that Frederick Douglass was black and espoused those values, is K. Carl Smith, a black conservative speaking out and empowering blacks and whites to be indefatigable and courageous with the positive message of true conservatism, and that you described yourself as an unyielding defender of the Constitution and liberty, inspired by the guiding principles of the Founding Fathers. And I love that about you, K. Carl. How is the organization going? Are you speaking a lot, and where can people hear you?
Done a lot of speaking, but we really start concentrating and doing more training than speaking, because we contend we don't need any more as conservatives and trying to save this country. We don't need any more rah-rah type of emotional rhetoric speeches. But we need people to come in and teach conservatives, empower them, equip them, and train conservatives, in other words, the choir, how to go out and bring in new choir members. So the problem we have with conservatives, we don't know how to engage, or we do it very poorly. So in our workshop, we call it Frederick Douglass Republicans 101. It's a 3-hour workshop where we teach conservatives how to take control of the political narrative. And once you take control, you start changing hearts and minds, because this is a center-right nation. Most Americans agree with us in terms of our values, but they ignore us because our reputation has been tarnished, because we're losing a propaganda battle as conservatives.
Yeah, I think when I look at our nation, there are so many people that really are conservatives. They just don't know it quite yet. And because I look at families, be they Hispanic or black, that have strong parents in the household, and there still are those. And they're church going, so they've got a foundation of faith. They believe in so many values that conservatives espouse, but they don't know it yet. So what your organization does, K. Carl, is really open their eyes and tell people, wait a minute, there are those on the left that want you ever dependent on government, and there are those on the right that espouse the principles of individual responsibility, and with that comes being able to hopefully, maybe, fulfill some of your dreams and support yourself and prosper, and not have to take a dime from someone else to build it for yourself, regardless of what this president says.
Exactly right. So what we have to do, and what we're doing, we're growing a nationwide army of Frederick Douglass Liberty Messengers. These are conservatives, white, black, Latino, who know how to engage their family members, their friends, their fellow citizens. They know how to share the conservative message in a way where they're not fearful of being called a racist or being called a sellout, and then they start changing hearts and minds. It's all about engagement. It's not the battle of ideas. It's the battle of propaganda that we're losing. That's the first battle, because many times we don't get to the battle of ideas because we're always defending ourselves in the battle of propaganda. We got to learn how to defeat the vile and the malicious attacks of the left. And the only way you can do that is through Frederick Douglass. That's the only way. Douglass trumps the race card. He defeats the class warfare attacks. That's why Douglass is so important, that we got to make him an integral part of our conservative message. And things like in Mississippi with Chris Daniels would never happen if he had sincerely learned about Frederick Douglass and embraced him. That would have never happened to a Frederick Douglass Republican candidate.
Wow. Yes, especially in Mississippi, that's true. Now, I'm assuming you might know Albert Guillory down in Louisiana.
The name sounds very familiar to me.
He's the black senator down there that changed from Democrat to Republican, and he had some great things to say, and I thought that he said something about your organization, but he pretty much saw the light and is espousing the same things you are, and man, is that something we need to get out. You are so right.
Well, let me tell you the story. Funny that you mentioned this. I know Senator Guillory. He and I met about 1.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. 2 months before he decided to make a party switch. Well, you got to understand, as a Democrat, Senator Guillory had a very, very conservative voting record. So for over 3 years, the Louisiana GOP had been trying to get him to switch parties. What they couldn't do in 3 years, I did it in 30 minutes. I was asked to give out a Frederick Douglass Award at a speaking event. I was a conference I attended, and that award was given to a local politician in Louisiana. Well, that politician was Senator Albert Guillory. And I said to them, I'm not going to pass out any award until I find out more about the individual. So they gave me Senator Guillory's phone number. I called him. This is 2 months before he made the switch.
Right.
And I want to make sure that he exemplifies the values of Frederick Douglass, which he does. So he and I talked for a minute, and he said to me on the phone, he said, I'm thinking about using this conference to switch parties, but I'm concerned about switching parties because if I do switch parties, that's political suicide for me because of his district. I said, you're exactly right, Senator. I said, what you going to do? He said, I don't know. So at that point in time, I started coaching him, mentoring him on the Frederick Douglass Republican message. So the Frederick Douglass Republican message is what gave him the inspiration and the grit, if you will, to come out of the closet.
Oh, man, that is so inspiring because we all know people. I've had a lot of friends that were Latino that espouse the values of hard work and the family and pro-life and all these amazing things that are part of our Republican platform, but they don't know it because the left tells them, no way. The Republicans only care about big fat cats that own industry. They don't care about the working man. And I think, no, wait, we do care about the working man. We are the working man, and we're about helping everybody prosper and protect life. And as you said, the Constitution. Yeah. Kay Carl, I love everything that the Frederick Douglass Republicans stand for.
Well, I thank you so much. And you're hitting it right on the head. You know, the challenges we're facing, it's not the battle of ideas, as I mentioned. The challenge we're facing as conservatives in trying to save this nation is the battle of propaganda. The left, they are the masters of deception, and they are the wizards of propaganda. We got to find a way how to defeat that. And the answer is Frederick Douglass. See what we're missing as conservatives. We're missing a superhero. We need someone who can come in who can, number one, defeat the propaganda attacks of the left. Number two, who can someone who can come in and reignite America's passion for liberty. And number three, someone who can empower conservatives on how to take control of the political narrative. That superhero is Frederick Douglass.
Yes. It's a fantastic idea. I love it. And Kay Carl, I would love to have you on the show again in the upcoming months, and we'll do a whole show with you and see where things are going and maybe involve some other prominent people. Would you do that?
Just give me a call and be happy to accommodate.
Okay, it sounds great. Hey, I thank you for being on. I know it's a short segment, but it's really important. And I want people, once again, your website is FrederickDouglassRepublican.com. Everybody ought to go there. Everybody ought to know these values and figure out how they can get this message disseminated to people everywhere and get people trained so we can bring them on board. Kay Carl, thank you for what you're doing, and I'll talk to you again.
Hey, thank you all. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. You're listening to Tami Jackson, and my last guest was K. Carl Smith of the Frederick Douglass Republican Movement. I will be right back with my next guest, Marc Hyden.
You're on the 405.
Thank you for shopping Amazon.com. When you do, that makes you a sponsor of the 405 Media. Click on the Amazon banner on top of our homepage. Then shop. Simple. It costs you nothing. When you think Amazon, click one more time on the 405media.com, then on the Amazon banner. Thank you. Gang of 405 here on the 405 Radio.
Good morning, John. Morning, Scott.
Scott, what's going on in your life?
Do you really want to know?
You were never a nobody. Who are you trying to kid?
Oh, shut up.
They put these people in charge of organizations that have never been in charge of anything else as far as I can tell, and they perform abysmally.
Do you think that after everything that's happened, there's any way in hell that a single-payer system would be implemented while Barack Obama is still in office?
I'm going to take my surliness and go find those individual people that were just on that tape there and hunt them down this weekend just to solve it for you guys, okay?
Dr. Gruber sounds like the epitome of an elitist who's tucked away in his tenured position at a university far, far, far away from real life of real people.
The original and classic Gang of 405, Saturdays 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific on the 405media.com.
The 405.
Off the grid.
And he's also the only person I've ever seen that could write, "My dog just rolled over" on Facebook and get like 62 likes.
I'm also, just a correction, I'm the best looking person in social media, too.
Off the grid with Matt Hochman and Beckett Adams.
You have men in the United States Army running for cover and hoping the police show up.
You know, the base is a soft target that's filled with brave Americans, but they got their hands tied.
I'm sure the jihadists completely consider it a soft target. It's like a shopping mall, or like you said, a school. It's probably worse than a shopping mall, because at least here in Arizona, you're allowed to carry.
In several of these shootings, Jared Lautner in Arizona, the Sandy Hook shooting, a number of these shootings always involved somebody who was desperately unhealthy in the head, but for some reason, the argument always turns into, get away from my gun. What can we do to maybe help people like this?
New day, same time. Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Only on the 405media.com.
You're on the 405.
The Phil Nason Show is a daily, 1-hour program featuring hard-hitting commentary on a variety of topics. From the world of sports, entertainment, and pop culture, The Phil Nason Show covers it all. For music, entertainment, and more, please check us out at philnasons.com.
Here's Sports Talk on the Phil Nason Show, Monday through Friday, 11:40 a.m. Pacific, 2:40 p.m. Eastern, right here on the 405media.com.
We are a bold and active voice for the unborn. We are Audio Girl Ministries, saving the lives of babies by helping moms in crisis pregnancies get past the crisis. How? Free ultrasound imaging so the woman can see the life she's carrying, and by supplying her with essential baby items, diapers, clothes, food, crib, car seat, all given with a loving and caring heart. Want to help? Log on to audiogirlministries.com. Make a tax-deductible donation. audiogirlministries.com. Thanks.
CSC Talk Radio is proud to be a part of 405media.com.
Listen to Beth Ann and Common Sense Conversations Talk Radio, weeknights, 8 p.m. and 1 a.m. Eastern, here on the 405media.com.
This is Katie Pavlich. You're listening to the 405 Radio.
The Talk Alternative is the 405media.com. We're in Los Angeles, California. Tami Jackson is up in Oregon, and it is the Tuesday night edition of the Tami Jackson Show. We will say hello to Tami's next guest, and he is Marc Hyden, National Advocacy Coordinator with Conservatives Concerned About the Death Penalty, a project of EJUSA. He comes most recently from the National Rifle Association, where he served as a campaign field representative in the state of Florida. Prior to his service with the NRA, he was the campaign manager of a Republican congressional race in western North Carolina. Marc has additionally served as the legislative liaison / public affairs specialist with the Georgia Emergency Management Agency / Homeland Security, and as the legislative aide to Georgia Senate President Pro Tem. Marc Hyden, welcome to the Tami Jackson Show.
Thank you so much for having me. And after hearing you read my biography, I think I should probably shorten it a little bit.
or just buy a bigger hat because you'll feel like the big star. Hey, welcome to the show tonight, Marc Hyden. Thanks for taking the time to be on.
Tami, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, I got contacted by John. We started out via LinkedIn. For all you folks out there that wonder how some of this works, you find people in amazing places for shows like this. I'll suddenly get a tweet on Twitter. Somebody will message me on Facebook. I'll get an email out of nowhere. Or suddenly I'll get an email from LinkedIn, and it's a lawyer, an author, a PR person that says, hey, I've listened to your show, and I have someone I think you should have on. And that was the case with this. I got the email from John, and he said, I've got somebody that I help represent, this Marc Hyden, and you might like to have him on your show. And so I took a look at that, and I thought, yeah, this is a great topic, because the death penalty is something that you don't hear talked about that much in our circles, or certainly on mainstream media, unless there's one that really goes awry and then they highlight it. But otherwise, we don't talk about this very much, and it's been part of state law throughout the U.S. since, the U.S. was formed. So, Marc, conservatives concerned about the death penalty is a network of political and social conservatives who question the alignment of capital punishment with conservative principles and values. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. We're a broad coalition of social conservatives, fiscal conservatives, and some libertarians who just believe that the death penalty, as it's operated today, doesn't fit within our principles, because it's not pro-life in our view, because it risks killing innocent life. And it's not fiscally responsible because it actually costs far more than life without parole. And lastly, I try to tell my fellow conservative friends that it's not limited government to give an error-prone state the power to kill its citizens.
And I appreciate those. I should tell people that I have always been pro-capital punishment, and I told Marc that off air, but I want to be gracious, and I want to air both sides of this equation, because I think it's an important debate to have, and I appreciate your opinion as a conservative. And also, before I go any further, I want to let people know, I want people to call in and weigh in on this topic. Are you for or against capital punishment, the death penalty, and why? Call in at 877-297-8022. Once again, 877-297-8022. Now, on the website, it lists those reasons, Marc, and it says, number one, some of us believe that small government and the death penalty don't go together, especially when we compare the high costs of capital punishment to life without possibility of release. Two, some of us don't trust the state to get it right. Now, I can agree with that. We already know that some innocent people have been sentenced to death, and for others, it may already be too late. Three, some of us are disturbed by the roller coaster for family members of murder victims, or wonder why we're investing so much in a system that doesn't keep us any safer than the alternatives. And four, some of us believe that the death penalty contradicts our values about protecting life. Marc Hyden, who exactly started this organization?
Well, we actually grew out of a coalition of conservative legislators and activists in the state of Montana, and when they all came together, they found out that each of them had one concern or another, or completely opposed the way capital punishment was being run. And with the success that we saw in Montana, that prompted a national dialogue to be started, and then we created the national version of that, Conservatives Concerned About the Death Penalty, and we actually debuted at CPAC just in 2013, so recently, and it was very successful, and we met many fellow conservatives that wondered where we had been for so long, because they had some of these issues and they just didn't know you could be a conservative and have a problem with the death penalty.
Yeah, and this is one of those things. Like I'm adamant about being pro-life for the unborn, and I won't move on that. I tend to be a social conservative and a fiscal conservative. I'm what you call a Reagan conservative, so I am conservative in a balanced way. I'm not what you would call a libertarian. So I look at this and I think, well, okay, I agree with some of your points, and others I'm thinking about. But I could see people being in our Republican tent that are conservatives, and they say, "No, we're not for this issue," and that does not offend me the way people that are for or against abortion really rubs me the wrong way. Now, I saw that one gal that started the movement in Montana was Heather. I want to say the last name should be Beaudoin, but how do you pronounce her last name?
Heather Beaudoin. She's my direct supervisor. She's fantastic.
Okay, so I said it properly. I thought, well, it's a French name. I'll just pronounce it the way I speak French. Let's see if I can pronounce this properly. And her bio says that she helped create Montana conservatives concerned about the death penalty before joining staff at Equal Justice USA and taking the national project. Previously, Heather worked for the Helena Pregnancy Resource Center, and I love pregnancy resource centers. Those people do good work in communities around this nation to help give women other choices. She also worked for the National Republican Congressional Committee in D.C. and for the Michigan Republican Senate Majority Leader Ken Sekulow. Heather graduated with a poli-sci degree from Calvin College, and I know Calvin College well. It's a Christian liberal arts college, one of them that I was looking at when I was that age a million years ago. Calvin College is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. She loves rodeos, hoo-ah, and her father even won a rodeo the day she was born. So she sounds like a great person and a great conservative, and this was something on her heart to start Montana conservatives concerned about the death penalty.
Yeah, it was, and she worked with a lot of others in Montana. And Heather, like myself, and like some of the others that work on the conservatives concerned about the death penalty project, they have a deep desire. We have a deep desire to protect innocent life. I'm a very pro-life individual, and that's in part why I oppose the death penalty. Because when you have an error-prone government, innocent people will be executed by the state. We know that over 140 people have been wrongly convicted, and those are the ones that we were able to prevent from being executed. We don't know how many innocent people the state has killed. So that's what drives many of us, is to protect the innocent life in this. And Tami, I think me and you would get along fine after I've heard more and more about your background.
Well, thank you. I think we would get along just great. I love people. I love conservatives. And there are some issues that you just say this far and no farther. And there's other issues that you say, well, we can talk about this. And this is one of those issues. And I think we're going to talk about this more after the break. I'm going to talk about the states that still have the death penalty, those that have gotten rid of the death penalty, and we've got some more things. There's some articles that have been written, one that's been written recently by Kirsten Powers. Certainly she's no conservative, but she's reporting on what some conservatives are doing concerning the death penalty, including you. So I will be back. You're listening to The Tami Jackson Show. I'll be back with my guest, Marc Hyden, after the break.
You're on the 405.
Thank you for shopping Amazon.com. When you do, that makes you a sponsor of the 405 Media. Click on the Amazon banner on top of our homepage. Then shop. Simple. It costs you nothing. When you think Amazon, click one more time on the 405media.com, then on the Amazon banner. Thank you.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction.
The Friddle Show.
Gay marriage is not even legal in Arizona, so how is this cake discussion even relevant?
The Friddle Show with Crystal Heath.
I mean, this bill, I read it today. You can read it. It's 2 pages long.
The Friddle Show, live Tuesday and Wednesday nights, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific.
It's become acceptable to sleep around. Did you know that only 3% of Americans abstain from sex until they're married?
The Friddle Show, family-friendly, politically incorrect news commentary from a young Christian conservative perspective.
And if my disagreeing with a lifestyle due to my religious beliefs is now the same as hatred, then I apparently hate 97% of Americans.
Live original talk only on the 405media.com.
The president, he wasn't too far off base when he said that we're no longer a Christian nation because, quite frankly, we're not. The general populace does not have a biblical worldview.
You're on the 405.
Voces Latinas.
Rubio has 100% rating from AFP. He has like a 97% rating from Heritage. He votes wildly conservative, more conservative than 98% of senators on 98% of the issues. Why fire Rubio over one issue?
Voces Latinas, live only on the 405media.com.
We don't want to fire Rubio over one issue.
We had 40 Hispanics walking around, and all they see, is pink slip Rubio, pink slip Rubio. Pink slip to me is fire.
Voces Latinas, Mondays, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific, only on the 405media.com.
But is it strategically smart to publicly heckle and call him a traitor? Rubio was lambasted publicly by Limbaugh. Michelle Malkin screams shamnesty like it's her job. I mean, shamnesty. Air your grievances with Rubio all you want, but I can't help it when I work with the Latino youth community trying to make them conservative, bring them to the conservative movement, and they're all like, well, Rubio's the only one that cares about us, and they hate him. They yell shamnesty at him.
You're on the 405.
Hey, it's John Grant from the 405media.com. We'd like to say we gave Bill Post his start doing a radio show on the internet. That would be partially true. We would like to congratulate Bill on the move to BillPost.com, where you can hear Bill and other great talk 24/7. No more AM, no more FM, just BillPost.com. And in your spare time, check out some great talk and a little nonsense at the 405media.com. Take it away, Bill Post. The 405 Media is on Blurt. Check out our homepage, the405media.com. Click on the Get Blurt banner, then install on your smartphone or tablet. Get audio alerts from the 405 Media on upcoming programs and events. Blurt and the 405media.com.
I was scared of dentists and the dark. I was scared of pretty girls and starting.
Hi, this is retired Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, and you're listening to the 405 Radio.
The Talk Alternative is the 405media.com. Tuesday night, Tami Jackson Show. We are halfway and some change through the show. Tami's here along with her guest, Marc Hyden. Let's send it back to Tami Jackson.
Thanks, John. We're talking about the death penalty and the group that Marc represents, conservatives concerned about the death penalty. We're taking calls at 877-297-8022. And right now we've got a caller on the line, Major Bob. Thanks for calling in. And what's your question or comment?
Well, thank you, Tami and John. And your guest name is, I believe, Marc.
Yes.
I have a question for information. My support of the death penalty is mostly in view of the reduction of recidivism by these characters, and you can prevent that by putting them in prison for life. But my question is, how is it that the death penalty is more expensive than life imprisonment? I don't really scan that concept, and I would like to be educated about that if you can do it.
Absolutely, Major, and first off, thank you for your service to the country. But to answer your question, leave it to the government to mess something up. As I tell a lot of my friends, it's more expensive than life without parole because the initial trial is many times longer than comparable trials that have the sentence of life without parole, and it has many more attorneys, more specialists, more forensics is done. And then you have an additional trial that's unique to capital cases, and it was actually mandated by the Supreme Court, and it just exists to see if the offender can receive a death sentence. Then you have to go through a lengthy appeals process that lasts decades. And sometimes it lasts so long that the offender actually dies of old age while waiting on the death penalty. And then you have to consider housing these inmates because they're housed on death row, which has completely different policies, and it's much more expensive than housing them, say, in general population in a maximum security prison. So different studies have shown that it's many times more expensive to try to execute someone. You can look at the study that Duke University did in North Carolina. I think it said a ballpark area of a death penalty case from the full life cycle is $2 million more than a life without parole case in the whole life cycle. Or you can look at California, who is probably the worst at this, and a study said that they've spent $4 billion on the death penalty program and executed 13 people. That's not fiscal responsibility.
Well, I don't want to be flip about it, but you could reduce the cost per perpetrator by executing more of them. But with a single appeal system and a quick resolution of the problem. And,
quick being the main problem, Bob.
Well, I know. I mean, we want, and goodness gracious, executing someone who turns out to be innocent is the absolute worst possible case, and I understand that. But it just seems to me that there is no deterrent in the current system.
Well, you can look at a lot of different studies that show that the death penalty does not deter murder. You can look at Texas. They use the death penalty more than any other state, but they don't have the lowest murder rates. In fact, they're not even close. But to get back to your other statement about limiting the appeals process, and Bob, I think you're spot on. You could do that, and it could make it cheaper. But when you get rid of the appeals process that has saved so many innocent people, you virtually guarantee that innocent people will be killed by the state. And most recently, you can look at Glenn Ford. It took him 30 years to clear his name before he was eventually released in Louisiana. And then you have another man whose murder conviction was overturned by the Supreme Court in Florida. He was in jail on death row for 28 years. So these appeals processes, they do save a lot of innocent lives.
Well, I appreciate your very reasoned and calm discussion of the issue, and it helps me. And I really appreciate the high value of content that you provide to this show. So I'll let someone else talk to you. And thank you very much for answering my questions.
Thanks for calling, Major Bob. Those were good questions, and this is what I hoped would take place tonight, because we're on the same side. We just seem, we have different takes on this issue, and we're all trying to figure it out. You know, Mark, there is anecdotal wisdom that says since the execution of criminals is rare and often takes years due to appeals, that the death penalty does not deter capital crimes. However, this is the problem. And I was talking to my dad, who was a research scientist, and then after that he was a pastor, and he taught apologetics, and he's done a lot with critical thinking and so forth. He said the problem is, and I agreed with him, is that there's no way to know how many people may have committed murders and other heinous crimes had there not been a death penalty in place. So we can never be really definitive about that. That's kind of out there.
It's really hard to prove a negative. I understand exactly what you're saying. Now, there are studies that have shown before and after. I mean, you can see murder rates actually went down in, I believe it was Illinois and Connecticut, once they repealed the death penalty. I'm not saying that repealing the death penalty makes crime rates go down. I'm just saying that there's zero correlation. And just to give you like a numbers breakdown, I don't think it's a deterrent, because out of 100 murders, one of those will result in a death sentence. And fewer than one of those out of 100 will actually come to fruition and end up in an execution. And that execution may happen 20 to 30 years after the crime. So I really don't think that thought process goes through someone's mind before they commit a horrific crime.
Yeah, probably may not. Once again, I'm taking calls. My guest, Marc Hyden, of Conservatives concerned about the death penalty, calls at 877-297-8022. Call in, tell us where you stand on the issue and why. Now, Mark, I was a little bit surprised that Jay Sekulow supported your organization and was against the death penalty, the quote I have from him, "I'm opposed to the death penalty not because I think it's unconstitutional per se, although I think it's been applied in ways that are unconstitutional, but it really is a moral view, and that is that the taking of life is not the way to handle even the most significant of crimes. Who amongst anyone is not above redemption? I think we have to be careful in executing final judgment. The one thing my faith teaches me, I don't get to play God. I think you're shortcutting the whole process of redemption. I don't want to be the person that stops that process from taking place." And that was from Jay Sekulow, Chief Counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice. And I have to say, I love Jay Sekulow, so that gave me pause.
Well, Jay, he's been fantastic. He's been one of our earliest supporters, so he's been out in front on this issue. And I think he makes several valid points. I mean, it obviously does lessen the chance of redemption when you execute someone. But when many of my friends talk about their support of the death penalty, because of what is said in the Old Testament, or even in the New Testament if you want to talk about Romans. But I'd like to tell them the current system of capital punishment is not run anything like the biblical death penalty. I mean, there's a mandate. You have to have a minimum of 2 eyewitnesses in the Old Testament to be able to execute someone. And there's only certain crimes where you can actually execute them. So we don't run it with the same high standard that they do in the Bible. You can still support the biblical death penalty and completely reject the current system.
Yeah, because I think if people are wondering, in Genesis 9:6, it says, "Whoever sheds human blood, by humans shall their blood be shed. For in the image of God has God made mankind." And that's why, Mark, early on, even suicide has always been a crime in most states, because we were not supposed to take a life of a human that was an innocent. That's why I try to tell people that there's a difference between taking the life of an innocent and taking the life of someone that's guilty. So we think about abortion, where they want to take the lives of unborn babies that are innocents, murderers that take the life of people that have done nothing, but they're just committing these crimes that are taking the lives, versus something like war or the death penalty, as you said, in the biblical manner, where there are multiple witnesses, where it's definite, and where it's speedy. And it also gives a person a chance to repent of what they've done. I have to say, I don't entirely agree. There are some people in the Christian community who have said that murderers, serial murderers, that have suddenly come to faith should be allowed to go free. And I don't agree with that. I see two different penalties. There's a spiritual penalty that people pay for what they do, and there is a penalty in the here and now. And to me, there are consequences that cannot be deterred, and one of those is if you take another person's life, there should be something very, very severe. Now, if it was life without parole, at some places I might be able to accept that. The problem is sometimes I think these people do get parole, and that's very, very unfortunate.
Well, I support. I like reading Bastiat, especially the law, where he said that the role of government is to prevent injustice from occurring. So, releasing dangerous criminals back into society, I don't think that fits within that. And we need to make sure that we protect society. And that's why I support a system of life without parole as opposed to the death penalty, because we can protect society, we can serve justice to the murder victims' family members, and we can do so in a cheaper manner that doesn't violate my concept of a limited government. And you can also look at others like Bill O'Reilly. He said he could support a system of life without parole while the offender has to work to pay restitution to the victims' families, as opposed to the death penalty. And I think that serves more justice than executing people, and perhaps executing the wrong people. And just to go backtrack a little bit on when we were discussing the Bible, and I don't want to get into a theological debate because I don't want to lose on the air to you. But there's, the ability to execute someone, the biblical death penalty comes with a caveat. It says that if you execute or if you convict an innocent person, God will not acquit you. And so us as citizens who are complicit with the death penalty, we're on the hook too.
Yeah, and answering to the Almighty, I want to make sure I'm on the right side of things.
Absolutely.
Well, this is Tami Jackson. I'll be back to wrap up the hour with my guest, Marc Hyden.
You're on the 405.
Thank you for shopping Amazon.com. When you do, that makes you a sponsor of the 405 Media. Click on the Amazon banner on top of our homepage. Then shop. Simple. It costs you nothing. When you think Amazon, click one more time on the 405media.com, then on the Amazon banner. Thank you.
In the bunker in the city of Pittsburgh, and now opening the Southern Command from Orlando, Florida, Mr. J joins the program.
Hutch, the Southern Command is armed and activated.
History is being made. No telling how this is going to end up.
This story has a lot of holes in it, and the other one is about the casualties.
Man, it's looking like doomsday over there. I mean, that's a capable force and ready to go.
Yeah, this thing is getting interesting.
Did you know that over 80% of Nevada is federal land? And that means it's time for Today in Cold War History with Mr. J.
1951, the Korean War. President Harry Truman relieves General of the Army Douglas MacArthur of overall command in Korea. And Hutch, I am happy to report there were no submarine collisions on this day.
That's good. That's good. Cold War Radio, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Friday nights on the 405. 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 1900 hours. Be there.
405.
It's John Grant here, owner and program director of the 405media.com. We don't really pass around the hat or the collection plate in social media. We do have a donate button on our website, and we'd be happy to be part of your advertising presence for Right of Center Talk. But the best way you can help us pay the bills at no additional cost to you is by the Amazon Associates program. I'm sure you know the drill, but I'll fill you in. Click on the Amazon banner at the top of our homepage, the 405media.com. That will take you to Amazon.com and identify you as one of our listeners. If you make a purchase, the 405media.com gets a little something, for the effort. You can buy anything under the sun at Amazon.com. And when you do, you support our growing talk and media operation. Team clothing, collectibles, books, everything. If you're going to buy it anyway, why not send a little bit our way? It'll cost you nothing. So remember, click on the Amazon banner on top of the page, then shop till you drop. Amazon.com and the 405media.com. Thank you.
We are a bold and active voice for the unborn. We are Audio Girl Ministries, saving the lives of babies by helping moms in crisis pregnancies get past the crisis. How? Free ultrasound imaging so the woman can see the life she's carrying, and by supplying her with essential baby items, diapers, clothes, food, crib, car seat, all given with a loving and caring heart. Want to help? Log on to AudioGirlMinistries.com. Make a tax-deductible donation. AudioGirlMinistries.com. Thanks.
The Phil Nason Show is a daily, 1-hour program featuring hard-hitting commentary on a variety of topics. From the world of sports, entertainment, and pop culture, The Phil Nason Show covers it all. For music, entertainment, and more, please check us out at philnasons.com.
Here's Sports Talk on The Phil Nason Show, Monday through Friday, 11:40 a.m. Pacific, 2:40 p.m. Eastern, right here on the 405media.com.
My sweet summer's gone. She left me here with sand in my bed. She played me all night long, but I do it all over again. Whoa. My sweet summer's gone, And on my mirror, she made it clear, lipstick can't be wrong. My summer, my sweet summer is gone.
The Talk Alternative is the 405media.com. We're in Los Angeles, California. Tami Jackson is up in Portland, Oregon. And we're winding it down for another Tuesday night, the final segment of the Tami Jackson Show straight ahead. Tami's guest, Marc Hyden. And one more time, here's Tami Jackson.
Thanks, John. Yes, I am back with my guest, Marc Hyden, National Advocacy Coordinator with Conservatives Conserved about the death penalty. This has been a pretty interesting conversation, and this is one of the few guests I've had on that we see eye to eye on a whole lot, but there's a little tension as far as where we stand on capital punishment. I tend to be one of these people that's biblically supportive of capital punishment. And Mark, I would quote Genesis 9:6 that says, "Whoever sheds human blood, by humans shall their blood be shed. For in the image of God has God made mankind." So myself, personally, I believe the death penalty is warranted for murder, rape, and kidnapping. And also, you mentioned the New Testament. Paul had a statement before the Roman governor Festus, and he said, and here's the quote, "If I be an offender, or if I committed anything worthy of death, I do not refuse to die." And for anybody wanting to look that up, that's in Acts 25:11. So in the Old Testament and the New Testament, we see that the death penalty, capital punishment, is put forward and is approved. But the problem we have, and this is what I do understand, Mark, is that in our current society, with our current government, is the application of that punishment done in a just way? Is it absolutely certain that we've got the right person? I mean, there's a number of things that people need to consider.
Absolutely. I mean, we can look at today's death penalty. It's not the biblical death penalty as set forward in Genesis and Leviticus and mentioned in other books as well. But we have a process right now it's ineffective, it's inefficient, and it's everything that we talk about that's wrong with different government programs. And just going back to the biblical side a little bit, we can look at the Bible, but I'd never seen a single quote from Jesus where he actually advocated for the death penalty. In fact, he stopped a biblical death penalty and said, "Those without sin cast the first stone." And of course, there's a lot of different interpretations everybody has with the Bible, but for me personally, I don't look at the Bible as a policy document. I look at it as a personal moral compass that can give us guiding principles on how to govern the nation. Certainly there's some crimes in the Old Testament that we wouldn't want to implement. You can put your child to death for being rebellious. Certainly we don't want to see that as a policy document or as a policy that we promote. I mean, certain kids, their parents, I don't know. But and I'm not trying to put anybody down. I'm a Christian, I'm a preacher's kid, but I want to make sure that if you accept all of the Bible as policy, there's some other ones in there that you may be uncomfortable with.
Absolutely. Mark, we've got a caller on the line. Who's there, caller?
This is Colleen.
Colleen, I'm so glad you called. So what's your comment or question for Mark?
I've seen this from several different angles through the years, having worked with inmates and inmate families, and I don't have any good answers for it. I agree that the system has really failed a lot of people, and I really think the death penalty should go on hold until they can get things worked out. And other than that, I can't remember what I was going to say.
Well, you echo what a lot of other conservatives say that I've met with, because a lot of us believe that there are some crimes that are heinous enough to require, or that could require a death sentence. We just don't trust the government to implement it effectively and efficiently without ever executing an innocent person or without wasting millions or actually billions of taxpayer dollars. So you're echoing a lot of concerns that I've heard as I go to see CPAC or I go to the Faith and Freedom Coalition's Road to Majority.
I guess the question I did have was, how do you feel about ones who admit to what they've done, who want to proceed with the death penalty,
do you have
but
any,
aren't given that option?
do you have any examples to give me on that?
I don't at the moment. I've known a couple of guys on death row who were waiting and waiting and waiting and, wanted to go ahead, but they were forced into appeals because of the legal systems in whatever states they were in.
There is an automatic appeals process that goes in there, and it's mandated by the states. So that just shows more government incompetence in the system. So I think that further backs up the point that the government just shouldn't be in this business.
If the government isn't, then who is?
Well, I don't.
That would be the next question.
I don't want to be in the business of killing U.S. citizens. I don't think that's the role of our state, or it should be. We should be trying to protect people from injustice, and I think replacing the death penalty with a system of life without parole makes much more sense. We won't be killing innocent people, and we'll save the taxpayers a lot of money because the taxpayers are actually victims too in this.
I totally agree with that, having crunched some of the numbers myself through the years.
We're coming towards the end of the show, but Colleen, thank you so much for calling. Those were great questions.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on, and thanks for being such a great guest, Mark. I appreciate your contribution here.
Thank you.
It's been great. Thanks, Colleen. This is a topic that really stimulates discussion, Marc Hyden, and any closing thoughts?
I want everybody to keep an open mind and remind you that you can support the death penalty biblically, or you can support it in theory and still not accept the current system because it violates many things that we hold dear, like life, fiscal responsibility. It fails as a deterrent, and even murder victims' family members say that the current system is very harmful and traumatic to them. So I think we need to take a step back and maybe believe that our government should have more humility and consider looking at the death penalty and replacing it with a system where we can save some money and make sure we don't execute innocent people. And, if you guys are interested in learning more, I encourage you to go to conservativesconcern.org. And if you want to send me an email, fan mail preferably, not hate mail, you can send that to info@conservativesconcern.org.
Awesome. Marc Hyden, thank you so much for being a guest on the show tonight.
Thanks for having me on, Tami.
Terrific. Next week, I will be joined by Maria Espinoza of the Remembrance Project. Maria is from Texas, on the border, and knows firsthand about the out-of-control flow of illegal immigrants daily entering the U.S. and the violent crimes many commit. Don't miss it. Until then, this is Tami Jackson, just one conservative gal, encouraging you to keep fighting the good fight.
Even inside.